Hello, everybody, and welcome to Todd and Shane's Cloudy Podcast, episode 446, recorded live Wednesday, December 18th, 2019.
Very exciting.
And I drew that out for anticipation there. And let me move my screen. I put something over top of your face, which honestly is normally a good thing. But
So you missed all the dancing I was just doing?
well, I'm only getting about one frame a second.
So my dancing probably looks better in that case. Like,
Yep. Topics at hand. So I want to start out with, so today is December 18th. It is 1 week before Christmas. And Shane and I were talking about that. So there will not be a show next week because it will be Christmas morning. And then, of course, as is often the case, New Year's Day is exactly 1 week after Christmas Day. So we will not be doing a show that way. So this day, this whole cascade of events that leads that today kicks off. But I would be remiss if I did not mention another notable thing with today. And Shane, do you know what else makes today special?
you're wearing a Santa hat that's 4 sizes too small?
Well, that happens a lot of days and some nights, honestly. But that's the After Dark podcast. We can't get into that. Any other ideas on what might be happening?
Is it someone's birthday?
It is many people's birthday. Roughly 365th of the population shares today's birthday. So yes, that is possible. Any notable birthday?
Could it be our executive producer, Lori?
It is. I was going to say, I was on the famous birthdays today, page. But yes, our producer, Lori Gowan, today is her birthday. We will not mention any numbers past that, but always a week before Christmas. So happy birthday to Lori.
Happy birthday, Lori. I would also like to point out whose birthday it is not. It is not mine. And we have officially made it a whole nother year without any recognition that Shane could potentially have had a birthday.
Do you have birth? Say that again a different way, because none of that made sense.
What if I write it down for you, right? I hold her written versus spoken.
Write it down, slide it across, and I'll have, yeah. So so Lori, so Shane's whatever, I can't even remember what we were just talking about. But Lori shares her birthday with Christina Aguilera, Katie Holmes, just all kinds of famous people.
I can see Lori doing a little genie in the bottle, right? Lori's probably got those moves. Well,
yeah, there's lots of DJ Lethal from House of Pain and Limp Bizkit. Oh, that's the good stuff right there.
Every now and then Pandora throws me a Limp Bizkit bone, and I'm like, thank you for that.
Limp Bizkit, when they were out, I hated them, and they were but yeah, every once in a while, a little Limp Bizkit is exactly what I need.
Yeah, and the other day, I don't know what got us on it, but we were talking about songs and music, and so in my Pandora, now I kind of let it does like just whatever it wants in my, based on things I've chosen. I call it thumbprint radio. And, I was trying to get it into that mood. I was like, all right, I want to kind of get into that, that stream. And man, it just would not get off hardcore rap. And they were all great songs, but I'm like, I am just not in the mood to back that ass up, right? It just wasn't the thing I wanted to do right then, but man, they wouldn't let it go.
So I don't know if you've watched on Netflix. They've got that new movie 6 Underground with Ryan Reynolds.
No.
I am a lover of all things Ryan Reynolds, so
Yes.
I've almost started drinking again just so I could drink his Aviator gin because I love the man so much. But there's a scene in there where it's a very serious scene, and he's talking to somebody, and he's and then he breaks out into the beginning of Lose Yourself. But it's not that. He's like, if you had, I'm not even going to get it right. But I'm like, oh my God, that is just, it's a great tune. Great. You love it.
We were talking about that the other night. The whole, Eminem winning an Academy Award or whatever for playing himself. Like,
yeah.
He didn't really act. He just showed up and acted like he would in that situation.
So what's my motivation here? What, yeah.
I don't know how that came up either. The kids are like, who is that? Like, shut up. No one likes you.
I'll tell you when you're older. Much, much older.
Yeah, I've played some rap songs for my children that are probably age inappropriate because I didn't realize they were age inappropriate until they started playing. I was like, oh, that's where I learned that word. Okay.
Yeah, and then you don't want to draw their attention to it. You don't want to panic and like immediately scream and change the channel, so you kind of act like nothing's going on. Yeah, we've all been there. Yep.
At this point, I just own it. I'm like, all right, look, you know these are bad words. They said them. If you say them, I'm gonna knock the crap out of you.
Yep, their mom and dad are just as disappointed in them as I would be in you.
Listen to you, all politically correct. Nice job.
Oh yeah. So you gave me a tee up earlier about the language thing. We were talking about languages before that, but I wanted to bring this up because this is something that you always used to bust my chops about me picking up grammatical issues on the slides that you and I would put together.
I have never noticed. Apostrophes, lose, what?
Shut up. And that really used to, I'm certain that on more than one occasion, Shane and I would be in front of a group of hundreds of people. I would look at a slide that he looked at last that had a glaring grammatical issue, and I would completely lose my train of thought in front of all these people and just go off on him. That has happened numerous times.
And just to be clear, what happened was Todd wrote it correctly. I got the deck. I went in and purposely undid it so it would drive him insane. That's the type of speakers we were. We literally tortured each other on stage.
Yes, that happened multiple times. And so my blood pressure would raise and I would throw stuff and all that. But I found the cure for that. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, but I don't, and you and I haven't done that gig in a while, but that stuff doesn't bother me much anymore because I've been listening to some language podcasts and I understand it now. Like, it's been explained to me, and so that's really helped my anger. It's gotten my blood pressure down. I'm a better man for it.
So I need a new angle is what you're saying.
I'm sure you'll absolutely find something that tweaks me. You've been very good at it for well over a decade, so I have no reason to believe that will ebb at all.
Is that like your daughter's asking about my boys that are roughly their same age? Is that my new angle?
Good Lord. That was one of the darkest moments ever as a father. And I was telling Shane about this before the show. I was in the car with one of my daughters and we were talking about some stuff, and Shane came up and my daughter's like, oh, doesn't he have sons about, our age? And I'm like, no, and let's never, ever speak of this again. Get out. You're done. Yeah, you need to think about what you've done before. Oh my God, I just like a chill, like it's like the breath was sucked out of my lungs. It was a horrible moment.
See, and so what I'm thinking is when I talk to one of them next time, I'll be like, hey, we sent you that Christmas card special. You should hang it up on your wall in your room, right? It's got my boys smiling, looking all debonair.
Oh,
be like the old '80s poster of Debbie Gibson I had up. Same type of concept.
Yep. And for those of you, I don't remember if you did it here or where it was, but when Shane found out he was having his second son, the way that he told the world was he had good news. Both of my daughters could marry his sons. That was the way that he announced that.
I do some really clever things, and that's one of my all-time favorite things I came up with.
Oh, it was horrible. Just the deepest of dark.
So, but what we're going after here before I got you off on how ways I'm going to torture you was you were educating me earlier about the Chinese language and kind of the differences between the written and the spoken, and kind of was interesting.
Yeah, and so it was telling Shane that Chinese has a written language that is separate from the spoken languages, and there's a weird combination of things where two people could speak Chinese but not be able to speak to each other, but be able to write the stuff down and communicate that way. And then Shane was talking about how that made perfect sense because he can write well. Debatable, but we'll let that pass for my larger point. But he can't speak well, or was it the other way around? Because you don't do either of them well, and I can't remember which one.
If this wasn't a family show, I would say.
Yeah. Right, but so I was going to say, one of the podcasts that I listened to that helped me understand all this was one called Lexicon Valley, and the guy that does that is a guy named John McWhorter. He's a linguistics teacher at a university. Very interesting topics. He's also very irreverent. Like the F-bomb shows up in, call it 50% of his podcasts. So nice. That's good. But he had a woman on there who just written a book, and if I had thought about it earlier, I'd put it in there, talking about how, yes, written and spoken language are separate. And from a mental standpoint, from a linguistic standpoint, but we've got this weird thing now where they are merged. and we haven't quite figured it out. And it is because of things like text messages and IMs and all of that these two things have merged, because written language used to be very slow, very deliberate, very thoughtful, where spoken language, is very off the cuff. They were kind of separate ways, but now we've got this way that they're merged that we haven't had before. And so that's why we get some of the crazy IM stuff Lori was talking about in the chat here, how she has desensitized me to punctuation and grammatical errors. That's one of those things. We're not used to reading that. We're used to hearing that, but not reading it. And it was an interesting book. I've not read the book yet, but it was an interesting thing I hadn't thought about.
Yeah, I mean, it is, right? I mean, you remember like the first time you were in a conversation and someone just said BTW, and you're like, you can't say BTW.
Right. Yeah, you can't. That's not how that works.
You can't say LOL, but
Yep.
but yet now you can, because it. Yeah, no, that's a fun little topic right there. That's interesting.
Yeah, and the other thing that she brought up was not only are the ways that we speak and write being mashed up in ways that we're not used to seeing before. Because of this, because of the persistence of it and the way that the technology works, we often find ourselves getting in this situation where we're having two conversations at once because of the lag and the written and all of that, which is, again, something that we don't normally do. Usually if you're speaking to somebody and they, take a sidetrack and change the topic, then the topic of the conversation, you try to pull it back, but you're not having to. It was very stuff I'd never thought of before. Very interesting.
Yeah. No, yeah, and the two conversations at once, yeah, that's another one, right? I guess that's dependent on your IQ. There's some people that, I know when I text message them, I just got to slow it down, wait. And there's other people, I'm like, all right, I'm going to blast you with like 4 different sets. Right, we're going to go like 4 of these conversations at once, because they are, they don't have to be, asynchronous, right? You can kind of do your thing, so.
Yeah. So and I'll try to find that book and put it in the show notes. But it was a very interesting. It's just stuff I'd never thought of. But for me, a lot of my frustration around all that was just understanding how it works, and listening to that podcast has helped a lot. So Lexicon Valley, and then I'll get the name of that book and put that in there too.
So what I'm really starting to learn is if it's on a podcast, then Todd believes it, right? It used to be if it's on the internet, it's true. If I can take things that bother Todd and get them into a podcast, call up old Stephen Dubner and be like, hey, I need you to say this so Todd will accept it. If
you can get Stephen Dubner to take one of your phone calls and change his mind based on that, then yes, I will believe whatever he says. Yes.
I'm kind of a big deal. I don't know if you know this, but
Yep. So Jill saw him speak at a conference once. Said it was just every bit as great as you'd think it would be.
Yeah, and that's what's fun about listening. So he's the host of Freakonomics and the author of the book, or one of the authors, right? If you're not aware who he is. But sometimes, some of those podcasts I'm like, I don't care about this person who's talking. And I find myself, instead of like listening to his guest or whoever, or not guest, but the people he's interviewing and kind of listening to their story, I switched gears and I started just listening to him and thinking about like how much prep work went into this, and and he's also another one, like he's like you, he's a super vocabulary nerd, right? He likes to just throw words in there, and I'm like, man, did he like spend like 8 hours figuring out how to wedge this toilet paper word day in there, or did that weird word that I've never heard just come out of his mouth in context correctly? And I don't know. I really like sometimes just to analyze what he's doing on that podcast.
Yeah, and they so he's a good one, and obviously that's a very professional podcast, and so they've got an army of people researching stuff and all that. But it is incredibly well done, especially if you like the books. The podcast is very much another one that I listen to a lot that's very similar. I find myself looking at the production techniques as Malcolm Gladwell's Revisionist History and some of his other ones. Same kind of deal. I'm a meta nerd. I like the content, but I like the production as well. Yeah.
Which is kind of one of the same problems I have a lot of times at conferences, and why I don't go to a lot of sessions, right? I find myself not listening to the content, but listening to, or breaking down what they're doing and how I would have taught that differently. And
I do exactly the same thing. I can't listen to anybody speak in public without critiquing. Mm-hmm. We're horrible people. Yeah. Speaking of speaking in public, I crashed SP Fest in Chicago last week, And that was a good time. So Chicago's just down the road from me, just a hop, skip, and a jump. About 6 hours in the old hoopty, and it was a good time. Got to run into a bunch of friends, the whole class reunion thing. I was only there for about 24 hours, so I didn't get a chance to say hi to everybody, but it was a pretty good time.
And so I'll be honest, right? I probably went to my last SP Fest, let's call it 7 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, right? It's been a long time.
Was it the one you and I did in Chicago?
Were we both there? Maybe.
We did one in Chicago, yeah.
Okay.
We both drove. Yep.
Yeah. And so, right, when I walked out of that one with like this low rent feeling. I mean, just being completely honest, right? A long time ago, but I just walked out of like, yeah, I don't want to do anything with that again. I just felt like, I don't know, I didn't like the vibe at all. And so I guess my question is, 6 years later-ish, did you walk out of the event going, this is pretty cool, I would like to do more of SP Fest, or was it fine? Just overall, how'd you feel about the show?
It was good. I definitely, being that one is just 6 hours away, and given that Mark and Julie, my coworkers at Praxis, generally go to that one, I will probably try to get into that one next year. Okay. They do SP Fests all over the U.S., so that one is definitely one that I'll go. I don't know if I'll go to the other ones. It was better. So it was at McCormick Place, which was, where Ignite was here 4 years ago, whenever that was.
That big giant, like you drive in and then take like an hour to park. That one, right?
Yep. And it was so a much nicer place. I don't remember where they had it when you and I went. It was out by one of the airports. I can't remember where at, but a much better venue, nice venue, hotel was attached and all that. It was good. There was a big vendor area. I was pretty amazed at how many vendors were there. There was a lot of people. It seemed legit. I liked it.
And so did you pay attention to the vendors? Like, what's the overall vibe? Is it internets in a box? Is it custom web parts? Is it services? What's the vendor vibe?
I didn't pay. I was only there for a little bit, so I didn't have any time to go really talk to the vendors. But it was a bunch of the ones that we know. I mean, it wasn't a bunch of like, who's that? It was, but it was like Valo was there. It was a lot of the ones we're used to seeing.
Okay. That's one of the interesting things when I go to these Power Platform conferences, right? I'm like, I don't know who any of these people are. Like walking through the expo hall, there might be the last one I went to, I mean, there was hundreds of vendors. And I'm like, I know like 4 of these companies. So. Yeah,
it was a good use of my time. So I guess I bring that up just because I got to see some people and I wanted to give them a shout out. But yeah, so if your experience was like Shane's before and you didn't think it was a great conference, give another look, see what's out there.
Nice, good to know.
It was worth my time. Got to spend some time with my car, so that's always a good time.
Yeah, well, we can't get off on that tangent, right? We've already been off on 7 tangents. But with vendors, right, reminds me, right, I think SysKit's got something new. Did you want to kind of plug that?
Yeah.
Or tell me what that is? Because they emailed me and I didn't read it.
So one thing I was talking to Mark the other day, and he's like, I don't know if it's possible, but I think that SysKit sign behind you has gotten more crooked since I saw it last. So I told him it was a vestige of the strange seismic activity in Iowa that I'm always telling my kids about, because when I was a kid, I had to walk uphill to school both ways, and it was because of weird seismic activity. And so I think that same weird seismic activity has resulted in the sign getting more crooked. I can't say.
Well, when your house falls into the backyard one day, we're gonna be like, the SysKit sign told us.
But only that corner, only right over there. So SysKit came out with a new product here a month or so ago called SysKit Insights, which is something that you use to get insights about your Office 365 tenant. And the thing that they're emailing everybody about now is that they have added more information about private channels in Teams. And private channels is something that I have struggled to find a good use for. So this is for folks that haven't done much with Teams, and I'm way outside of my lane here, but with Teams you have a team that's based on a group, so it could be accounting or whatever, and then inside of that team you can have channels, which are basically topic areas, but people have all the permissions to it. A private channel is inside of another team, but it is only the only people that can see the private channel are the person inside of the team that created the private channel and whoever they gave access to. So for instance, if Shane is the owner of the group that made the team, and Lori and I are members of that, we can go into all the channels that team has. But then if Lori and I get sick of Shane's crap and want to complain about Shane, we can't do it in any of the regular channels because he can see them because he's the owner. So we can create a private channel inside of Shane's team that Shane can't ever see and can't seize. That's from what I believe that is a factually accurate description of private channels.
Okay. Well, bizarre, but okay.
Yes. And so because Lori and I may want to share documentation of how much we don't like you, when you create a private channel, that creates a private SharePoint site for all the document storage. So you can see how this kind of gets all over everywhere. But because of the security nature of the private channel, there's all these little weird things that have to happen so that the team owner can't see it. Yeah, very confusing. And so, for instance, if you create a private channel, and I recommend playing with this because it is just like all the pieces don't fit together the way that I expected them to. If you create a team, make sure that you're just a member, not an owner, create a channel, make it a private channel. If you go into the admin center, Office 365, SharePoint Admin Center, the SharePoint sites that private channels create do not show up there. So there's this weird thing there. They will show up with the SPO PowerShell commandlets. And the way that I was first playing with them, and I've got a blog post that I need to check one more thing before I publish. But then there was the issue of, let's see, so Lori and I create this private channel. It was all my idea. So I am the owner of the private channel. Shane is the owner of the team. I'm the owner of the private channel that Shane can't see. And Lori is a member. If I get tired of Shane's crap completely and I just leave the organization, who owns that private channel? Where does it go? And that was the thing that I was investigating for a customer because it doesn't show up to the tenant admin inside of the SharePoint admin console. So you can do it with PowerShell, and I've got the PowerShell that shows how to do that. And also, if you do a get SPO site, it's got a specific site template, so I've got some of that PowerShell to show also. But when I was doing the research for that blog post, I saw some documentation that said when that situation happens, another member of the team gets promoted to owner, and I did not see that, so I need to double check all that.
That was the verbal equivalent of waterboarding, I think.
Hopefully because of the content, not because of the delivery.
Yeah, it was definitely the content. It was not the delivery. I understood, but my brain had such a hard time with how ridiculous and awkward that I felt it was.
Yeah. In the chat room, Kevin is saying that's basically how Slack works, and that could be, I'm not a power user in Slack, so that could be what they were trying to get at. But anyway, so back to the topic at hand. So the email that you got today, I'm just so mentally exhaused from trying to.
I fell asleep and then got sick all at the same time. Yeah, that was rough. So
so what Syskit, the thing that they emailed you about today and me about today is they have added exposure to the private channels in Teams in Syskit Insights, and I've not looked at it yet, so I don't know if they end up getting exposed to somebody they're not getting exposed to get exposed to. But if you're running Teams and the private channel thing is confusing you, much like it is me, there's a free trial of Syskit Insights, so go out and give it a look and see if it helps.
I think that's the moral of the story. Syskit hit the nail on the head that people need help with this.
Yeah. Yep. But I've got the blog post, and hopefully once that goes out, that'll generate some conversation. I'll maybe get more comfortable with Teams.
This kind of reminds me of the old days, like when you would break down OneDrive for business versus pleasure for people, and I just had to shut my brain down and go sit in the corner while you talked about it because it was just too painful. So there's some rough edges there. So that's so I've got a blog post on that, but yeah, check out Syskit Insights, and if you can get to syskit.com, products insights, it's in there. So, and then other products we have to check out. I think you've already checked it out, but I'm still holding on to my PlayStation Vue. I'm still there for another couple weeks.
Yep, I've washed my hands of those guys. And they were good. When we first did this, 2 years ago, PlayStation Vue was the one that we settled on as the best at the time and was okay for a while. I mostly switched because they must have lost a contract with one of my local providers, local stations. I switched to YouTube TV however many months ago. I'm pretty happy with it. I really like it.
That's good to know because Ever since PlayStation announced it, I can tell that like they just don't even care. Like they're like, oh, software's not working? Yeah.
Bite it, yeah. And that's one of those things, when you think about it, if you're going to buy a video service from somebody, are you going to buy it from Sony, or are you going to buy it from the folks that brought you YouTube? And the folks that brought you YouTube, they know their video pretty well. It's just got a whole bunch of stuff. In the chat room, Mark is asking if I've got any experience using YouTube TV with the Roku. That is almost exclusively how I use it. I've got a bunch of Roku Ultras, I think. And the interface is really good. I get mixed up on a couple of bits, and it's from having had a TiVo 20 years ago, and that's just how that got cemented in my head on how stuff works. But if you're watching a recording and then you want to go watch something else, the recording keeps going on in the background, and if you try to get out, there's just this weird thing that doesn't work the way my brain's supposed to work. It makes perfect sense once I catch that I'm doing the wrong thing, but you have to go up and pause the thing to make the sound stop. So big fan of YouTube TV.
Oh, good. I'm certain that that's where I'm going to go. I just have not been in a hurry to, deal with changing all that, because then I'll do it on all the devices, right? The kids have got a Roku, and
Yeah. In the chat room, Lori is saying that she used or using DirecTV Now, and that she was having constant buffering, and with YouTube TV, she was not. And that's exactly the thing. That, like, it's all those things. Like, do Sony and DirecTV, do they have a lot of experience pushing tons and tons of video down itty-bitty little pipes? No, I mean, they're not dumb people, but that's not been their wheelhouse. Does YouTube have any experience with that? Yeah, about 20 years worth. And so they just, like, all of those things just seem to work better with YouTube TV.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of TV subscriptions, I don't think we've talked about this. Have Disney Plus, did you do it? No, it's right. You didn't do it because you didn't want to fall for it, right?
I may have relented a little bit. I have been consuming me some Disney Plus. Yes.
So was it The Mandalorian that pushed you over, or was it your children wanting to watch some Disney show?
The Mandalorian mostly. The Disney stuff is odd because we've bought a bunch of that, and I've got a Plex server, which is kind of, for those that haven't seen Plex, you can go to plex.tv and find out about that. But it is essentially, the easiest way I can explain it, it is a personal on-premises Netflix, essentially. So over the last however many years, when a movie would come out, I would buy the DVD or the Blu-ray, I would rip it and put it on my Plex server, and that's like, my kids never touch physical media, and they haven't. And so they already have a lot of those Disney movies accessible via TVs. So they were not a big driver for that. But it's interesting. Disney Plus has a lot of franchises. It's like somebody at Disney said, how are we going to make sure that the streaming platform will be viable and make us lots of money? And somebody else in the room said, well, we're Disney. Let's just buy everything anybody wants to watch and put it on there. And the other person went, yes, let's do that. So it's all of the Disney movies and related content, all of the Marvel movies, all of the Marvel TV shows since the beginning of time. I spent a lot of time watching Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends from the 80s. They've got Star Wars and everything ever related to Star Wars, every TV show. The holiday special, conspicuously absent. They've got National Geographic. And so there's just a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah. No, it is interesting. You say every Disney movie, but what we've actually found, right, is there's certain movies that they don't own the rights to stream yet.
Yeah.
So, like, I saw the advertisement for Mighty Ducks 3, and I was like, oh, man, I want the kids to watch the Mighty Ducks, right? They're sports players, and I think they'll really love it.
Yeah.
Disney Plus does not have the rights to Mighty Ducks 1. So, I can't start at 2 or 3, so I got to wait until, like, June of next year when they get that back, and then...
Yeah.
So there is still some, it's not a perfect story yet of everything Disney is there, I guess is what I'm trying to drive home.
And that's another one of those things. So now we're getting to see the seedy underbelly of how all the streaming stuff works, because a year ago, Netflix had all the Marvel movies and you could go there and watch them all. Well, obviously Disney doesn't want that to be the case because they want you to come to their streaming platform. So now we get to watch this thing where, in the background, there were some lawyers and Netflix signed a contract with Disney that says we get to watch the Marvel movies until, June 2020. And then that's why they're not on Disney Plus, and that's why they're on Netflix. And then in June 2020, they're all going to go away from Netflix, and everybody on Netflix is going to be mad. But it's the weird stuff, yeah.
Yeah, right. The same thing's going to happen with Friends and Office, right? Both of those
Yep.
are going to get yanked out of. Right. Netflix's like top 5 shows are all going to be leaving the platform.
Yeah, and it's all because of these. So that's the thing. The reason I bring that up is because everybody gets mad. I know Lori's a big Friends fan, and so there are people like her, like, oh, why is Netflix getting rid of Friends? Bruh. Well, Netflix is not getting rid of Friends. Netflix is legally not allowed to show you Friends anymore. They would love to. Don't get me wrong, but that's that kind of weird stuff that we don't want to have to think about, but does impact us.
Yeah. Well, so right, it's a nerd show, so I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't, without having any spoilers. Overall, Mandalorian, you good, you bad, indifferent?
I am indifferent, leaning towards good. So without giving anything away, one of the things that I've really, really loved about streaming services like Netflix and Amazon Prime and some of those is that they are able to drop series all at once. And I like that because I'm impatient and I don't want to have to wait a week for the next episode. But it also lets them do storytelling better. For a show to be on network TV, when the pilot goes, they got to blast a bunch of stuff. They got to introduce all the characters, but then they got to introduce conflict to make you excited so you come back the next week, but they've only got, 22 minutes or 44 minutes to do it. And you get this weird storytelling issues based around that thing. And when you've got Netflix dropping all 10 episodes of something or Amazon Prime dropping all 6 episodes of a season, now they're not doing that because they just need to keep you interested for like 30 more seconds till the next episode kicks in. And now they can tell the story better. So instead of it being a TV show, now it's a 6-hour movie with, breaks every hour, something like that. And I find that storytelling for me works better. I enjoy that experience more. The Mandalorian very much has that episode of the week feel. So it very much has, there's the Mandalorian. There's not a lot of overarching story. There is one very obvious storyline that goes along, but it's very much the who's the bad guy of the week. All the problems get wrapped up in 37 minutes. And so I haven't completely adapted to that yet.
Yeah. Well, I think to your point, right, the frustration, right, is that the one overarching story, we're all just like on pins and needles. We want to know everything there is to know about that storyline. And so while we might enjoy this week's heist, at the end of the day, we're like, I don't give 2 craps. I want to know what happens. Yep.
Yeah. And so in the chat room, so there's a bunch of people watching it. Mark is mentioning the production. The production is freaking amazing. And I can't remember exactly what that series, the first season, cost, but the production, the special effects, the acting, all of that. Good stuff. And and the other thing that I found interesting, so with The Mandalorian, for those of you that haven't watched it, he is the same species or occupation that Boba Fett was in episodes 5 and 6. And they make a really big deal about the fact that he never takes his mask off in front of people. That comes up all of the time, like twice an episode, every episode, they mention this fact that he doesn't take his helmet off. Now, normally, I'm a very curious person. That would irritate the crap out of me because I would want to know when's he going to take the mask off, when's he going to all that kind of stuff. But since I know who the actor is and I know what he looks like underneath the mask, I find that irritation isn't there, but I enjoy the aspect of the storytelling now that the mask provides him with the characters. I am completely on board with it irritating the crap out of the other characters so long that it doesn't irritate me. And it doesn't because I know what the actor looks like. So I'm good. It works well for me.
Well, so to that point, where I kind of thought you might be headed with this is if you go back and watch the early, like episode 1 and 2, right, where Jango is in there, right, which is Boba Fett's father.
Yep.
Jango does not wear his helmet all the time.
Right. Well, we know what he looks like. Yeah. Yeah.
But so was he not part of this? And I don't know. They're not a race. This cult.
Guild. Yeah.
Well, the guild is the other thing. So
that's true. That's true. Yep.
So this cult, are they not part of this cult? Right? Or were they the genesis that caused this thing to happen? Like, so that's the one disconnect that I don't like is that I've seen Jango's face. I never saw Boba's face.
Right.
But, I saw Boba's face as a baby or whatever he was. But
yeah, clone. Yeah.
So I don't know. Just
Yeah, and I think part of that is probably the fact that the cat's already out of the bag for Django, because we know what it looks like from the movies. So they can't work us on that one. So like,
Yep.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing to keep in mind is the series takes place 5 years after episode 6.
Yep.
So that's to give people a timeline. Yeah, but yeah, it's good. It's not great. I'm glad I'm watching it. I'm glad they're putting it out. There've been a couple of just really great moments inside of it. I really like it. And I guess so. Today is the 18th, and the next Star Wars movie starts tonight at midnight or whenever they play with those dates so much. But apparently the new episode of The Mandalorian is dropping today, which suggests to people that it will have some relevance to the movie tonight or tomorrow.
I did not know that. I have my tickets for Friday. So Friday is the official opening day, but to your point, the shenanigans. I think tomorrow night is the night that they start.
Yeah. It's Friday somewhere. That whole.
Yeah, and I wondered, and I've spent zero effort looking into this, so someone smarter than me probably knows. But I wondered if the way they get around it, because all of the Thursday night showings all end on Friday. So maybe as long as the movie ends on Friday local time, that's okay? I don't
think that's the case, because my daughter is babysitting for a friend of mine. He and his wife are going, and she will definitely be home before midnight.
But you said tonight, not tomorrow. Or did you?
Tomorrow night.
Oh, okay. So you...
Yeah, so Thursday night.
Okay, thank you.
My daughter is babysitting for, and I think that show's going to be done at 9:30 or something.
Huh? Then there you go. There goes my terrible theory.
Yeah. So completely tangential. So now in the chat room, Mark Chrisman's asking about The Watchmen. I just finished up the Watchmen movie about an hour ago because I've heard the Watchmen series is so good. So.
All right. Are we supposed to be talking about anything else?
I do have one more tech thing, and then I see you've got a tech thing in the notes. We want to wrap up. So we haven't done many episodes since Ignite because we've both been busy and all that. But one of the things that dropped at Ignite was new PowerShell for the Microsoft Graph.
Ooh.
It's officially called the Microsoft Graph SDK PowerShell, but don't let the fact that it says SDK confuse you. It is just PowerShell commandlets for the Microsoft Graph. And I think it's pretty good. So I've been playing with it for a couple of months. I got my hands on it a month or so before they went public with it. It's got a lot of potential. It's got some really big rough edges that they need to fix. But I've been talking to the guy that works on that, Daryl Miller, and they've been really open for the feedback that I've given them. And so if you do a lot of PowerShell with Office 365, you can't not recognize the importance of the graph. And so this is hopefully going to be a good module that will kind of put all that together so you can do graphy things all in one spot.
Interesting. It's, and I guess the other thing I remind people when we talked about this last time, right, is a lot of times I find myself using Flow to interact with the Graph API instead of the commandlets, right? Because it's just the world that I live in now. But the overarching story here is if you haven't engaged with the Graph API in some capacity, you're missing like half of Office 365.
And I don't remember when you and I talked about it before, but there's a great video Jeff Snover did at Ignite that sort of explains what the graph is, what the substrate is, and how he thinks of that, which really helped me. So it was Mark and I were talking at Ignite. I'm like, yeah, I know what the graph is, but it's that old saying, you really don't understand something until you can explain it to a 5-year-old. There's no way I could have explained the graph to a 5-year-old before watching this Jeff Snover video. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. But that's a good thing. So watch that video, make sure you understand where all the pieces are, then grab this PowerShell and just start noodling about.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And then remember the Graph Explorer. So if you just search Microsoft Graph Explorer, there's a great little website you can log in and it'll help you pre-package some calls, because it's real easy for us non-devs to be like, oh, that's API stuff. I don't care about that. Well, or maybe you do the Todd's way with PowerShell, but at the end of the day, APIs are just text wrapped in curly brackets. You just send and post to, and it's something that is non-devs. We're not going to write our own API. We're not going to do fancy things with APIs, but man, we can steal some code to say, hey, plug this in, and it gets back this data I need. Bingo, bango.
Yeah. The Graph Explorer is great for prototyping the PowerShell stuff and just getting a feel for what the graph can do. I'm a big fan of the Graph Explorer. So kudos to those guys. The Graph is a gigantic thing that's owned by many, many competing sort of organizations inside of Microsoft. So getting that all put into one module so that we can more easily use it, very helpful. So thanks to those guys.
And remember that Graph, it doesn't make graphs. It has nothing to do with it.
There's no graph paper involved. Yes.
Yeah, that I think that's also another problem with it. Is it very off-putting.
Well, and the interesting thing about that, and I was talking somewhere about that, is that's not Microsoft's fault. There is like a mathematical definition of graph because like Facebook has their own graph. It's a thing. Graph is a noun that we've not used in that, context before, but that's not their fault.
Yep. All right, and so then last I just had real quick. So since you guys are all SharePointy people for the most part,
You are.
I finally, after literally over a year of working, research, and trying stuff, figured out how to save files directly from Power Apps into a SharePoint document library.
Excellent.
Which, if you're like, well, duh, that should be super simple. It should be super simple. It is. Now, my way is pretty straightforward. But going into that, it was borderline rocket science. It took a really long time for us to kind of wrap our heads around how to do that. So I have a YouTube video out there that walks you through it. And, because once again, when you first get into Power Apps, I want to save a file to a SharePoint document library. Ha ha. You gotta learn. So.
Yeah, and no, so is that something that has been there forever? Like, could you have done that same thing a year ago and gotten it to work, or did they add something on the back end?
So they added something. They added a new function, a JSON function. That's a big part of it.
Gotcha.
But the other part of it was I invented a new way to use a control that they released for something else. I hacked it to do something that they didn't intend for it to do.
Well, what could possibly go wrong?
And so, yes, you had to combine those two, that new concept with that new function, and then that was how we got it. And I talked to the controls, the guys at Microsoft that build these components, and they didn't have any problems with what I was doing. Right? They actually kind of helped me work through some of it. They're like, we hope to one day in the far, far future make it so that people don't have to do this, but we're not against the shenanigans that you're pulling to make that thing to make this work the way it does. So.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. That's it. I'm going to bung up the quote, but it's something like, there's a fine line between clever and kludgy, and everybody's clever hack is somebody else's. Why did they do that?
I get it.
So yeah, check that out if you do the Power Apps thing and want to save some files to SharePoint. That is the way to do it. All right. So and I wish I had mentioned this earlier. So every year between Lori's birthday, which again is today, happy birthday to Lori, and next month, which is my birthday in January, we do the charity drive. And so now is that time. Today is officially the first day. Had we done a podcast last week and the week before and all that, we would have said something about it, but we forgot when we did the Twitch deal. And I promised Lori that I would do that, and I fell down on the job. My apologies. So you can go out to lorigowan.com /site pages /TK charity. And I think I have a short URL out for that too. I'll put it in the show notes. But this is the time of the year when basically Shane and Lori and I do our tradition. Great time of the year to be charitable and giving and all of that. So what we're asking for is not to give any charities that we care about, although you're welcome to, but basically just encouraging people to give a little bit of charitable contributions to a thing that is valuable to you, something that's meaningful to you, and then go to Lori's website, lorigowan.com, and put it in there. And in past years, I have matched those charitable donations. The amount of them in the thousands of dollars has gotten tough for me some years to do, but we'll endeavor to do that. My wife's on board, so we can usually make that happen. But go out there and submit that, and then just tell us what you donated for, how much you donated for, and then we like to tally it up at the end of the year. We've raised over $10,000 for charities over the years, I think, or 20, I forget, lots. But that's kicking off now, and it means a lot to Lori and I. Again, it kind of our birthdays kind of bookended, and it's just we like that stuff. So go out, give a little bit. It means a lot to us.
I'm just gonna be quiet.
Well, if you had a birthday, we'd work it in somehow. But as far as I know, that doesn't happen. So I mean, I don't. It would just mess the whole thing up.
Yeah, yeah. This is my yearly protesting of the lack of my birthday. So.
Yes, and Lori just posted in the chat room the sum right now, not counting my matches, is $21,000.
Man, so you've matched 21,000? Nice.
I did not. There were some years that I was not able to do that, so I don't know what. And again, it's kind of a, it's one of those whole, clap for yourselves, pat yourself on the back sort of thing. My wife and I give to a bunch of other charities anyway, so some of that was money we would have given otherwise. Sometimes it's not, but it's really just a reminder. This came out of the financial crisis that we had here in the U.S. 10 years ago. There were a lot of folks that were really hurting. Some of us were hurting less, and this was just one way for me to remind folks that if you can spare a little bit and help some folks out, now's a good time to do it. It's always appreciated.
Well, as much as it pains me to say it, I really am really like that you guys do this every year, and I just feel like I'm a tag along on this one because it's your and Lori's birthday celebration. But I really do appreciate and think it's wonderful you guys do this, even though I'm going to complain about it the whole time.
Yeah, and I can't even take credit for it. I am also just a tag along. It's Lori and Dan Usher first conceived this 10, 11 years ago now, I think, and I'm just the pretty face. That's I just provide the end date, the ending birthday.
God, Lori, imagine how much more money you'd make if you'd gotten a prettier face.
They get all of the credit. I want none of the credit. It's all Dan and Lori.
Good job, guys. All
right, well, I'm going to get back to work. I've got some PowerShell to sling. You have some Power Apps to Power App. Whatever you do over there. Merry Christmas, everybody. We will see you after the beginning of the year. Have a great holidays, whatever your holidays of choice are right now. Go out, rock them, have a good time.
It is. Yep. Congrats, or not congrats, but yeah, I hope you guys all enjoy. I'm sorry. I'm still all like sentimental about you guys and your $21,000 you've helped bring light to. So I'm really still just touched by that. So yeah, Merry Christmas and all those things.
All right, everybody. We will see you after the beginning of the new year.
Toodles.